What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Varsity Overland channel, and I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. If you're new to the channel, this is actually my 14th week in a row posting a video, and I'm super proud of that, and I really want to keep that moving forward. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my weekly content. Now, I'm starting this video in the garage today because it is pretty windy outside, and I got all my neighbors doing their leaves with their backpack blowers, and there's a couple tractors and lawnmowers, and everyone's making noise. So I'm just starting this video in the garage, so at least you can see my face talking to the camera, but don't worry, you're not going to have to look at me the whole time. I am going to incorporate some B-roll, and I'm going to narrate using my mic that I have in the house. So today's video is... You can probably hear the leaves rustling around right now. Today's video is 3 items that I have never used with my vehicle, the Colorado ZR2, aka Goose. 3 Overland items that I got pretty early on, I'd say within a year of our adventures, and we've been doing this for about 3 years now. And these 3 Overland items I've never used. I thought they were necessary. Turns out that I didn't actually need them. Now, I just want to forewarn you, you're probably not going to agree with all 3 of these items, and by no means am I saying that they're not needed for anybody, okay? So this video is not meant to be like a suggestion video, like, oh, you don't need to spend your money. If you've got these things and you use them, then that's awesome. Some of these things I actually don't regret buying, and you'll find out what they are in a minute. But I just wanted to let you know, after our 3 years of travel, which includes 2 cross-country overland trips, one of them being 8,000 miles and the other one being about 5,000 miles. These 3 items we just never used. So I'm going to take the camera into the house, I'm going to hook up the mic, and we'll go through what those 3 items are. So first up on the list is going to be a high lift jack, also known as a farm jack. Now, the high lift jack can be a bit controversial just because of the large range of differing opinions about it. Some people know how to use them safely and have used them repeatedly to help recover their vehicle or change a flat tire, while others believe that they're just meant to be a hood ornament for your Jeep. Now, regardless about how you feel about the high lift jack, I think one thing everyone can agree on is it's believed to be a universal item that everyone needs when they're off-roading or traveling, but a large percentage of people who own them have actually never used them. And in fact, I am one of those people. Not long after I got my truck and I was planning on taking it off-roading or traveling, one of the first items I went out to purchase was a high lift jack. Even though I had no idea how to use one, and I didn't even know where I was going to store it. And that might actually speak to a greater concern regarding the high lift jack is the percentage of people who have them but actually don't know how to use them. I know that they can be effective tools when you're out on the trail. I've actually gone to a course as part of an overland rally where presenters were teaching the audience how to properly use a jack because they can be very dangerous pieces of equipment. Now, I can only speak from my experience, and by no means am I telling you, the viewer, that if you have a high lift jack that it was an unnecessary purchase. But for me, with my 3 years of travel under my belt, I never actually used my high lift jack, and in fact, I think I fell into the same hole that a lot of other people fall into. I bought the jack, I mounted it to my vehicle, and I pretty much just left it on the vehicle for an extended period of time. I believe it was about a year. And after all the travels that we went through, all of the different elements that the jack was exposed to, by the time I took it off the vehicle to store it in my garage, I realized that due to the dust, dirt, sand, freezing temperatures, and then thawing temperatures, the pins and hinge mechanism were actually compromised, and the jack was no longer usable. And these events, of course, made me wonder how many other people mount their high lift jack to their vehicle, never touch it, never think about it, and end up ruining it because of what it's exposed to. So this past summer, when my wife and I were cleaning out our garage, I actually decided to throw away the high lift jack. So you might be asking yourself, well, if you threw away your high lift, then what are you going to use if you need to lift the vehicle while on the trail? Well, honestly, my vehicle is not much heavier than it was when it rolled off the lot. The heaviest items to consider might be my rooftop tent and a small winch bumper in the front of the truck. So after talking to some mechanically savvy friends of mine, we determined that the stock jack that came with my vehicle should still be enough to get the job done. And if it wasn't, I would probably just go pick up a bottle jack, which is easier to store, it's lighter, and I could keep it on the inside of the vehicle where it's not going to be bogged down by the elements. And truthfully, there are only so many points of contact that you can use on your vehicle with a high lift jack. For my truck, I would probably only use the hitch. Some people have said that you can use the rock sliders on the side of the vehicle. Mine are not welded to the frame, they are bolted to the frame, so I would probably be a little apprehensive about using that as an attachment point for the high lift. Now, like I said, I'm not telling you to get rid of your high lift jack and switch to something else, especially if you know how to use it properly and it's helped you out in the past. I'm only making this list based off of my own personal experience. In the past 3 years of travel, I've never used my high lift jack, and in fact, it broke down to the point where it was unusable and I had to get rid of it. Moving on to item number 2, which is a portable air compressor. And I know this is the point where people start to think that I'm crazy. Now, right off the bat, if you have your portable air compressor mounted to a really convenient location within the cab of your vehicle, and airing down or inflating your tires is a simple process, I'm actually quite jealous, because if that were the case for me, I would probably use mine more often. But in my situation, my portable air compressor is inside of a bag, which is usually buried somewhere within the bed of the truck, and I don't have a long hose that can attach to multiple tires at a time. So I've always been quite reluctant to put in the effort to actually air down my tires. And on top of that, I bought the Colorado ZR2 because of its off-road capability. It's got specialized suspension, it's got four-wheel drive, and it has a front and rear locker. If I were missing any one of those items, I would probably be more inclined to air down my tires on a regular basis. In fact, there have been several times I've been with a friend on the trail, and he's been able to air down his tires and complete that trail using only two-wheel drive, whereas I ended up engaging traction control and possibly one of my differentials. But I never aired down my tires. And if I do find myself in a sticky situation, I have my recovery tracks, as well as a winch, which we'll talk about in a minute, to help myself out. Now, I am cheating a little bit with this item on the list, because I did air down my tires on the 4Runner that we own before driving in sand on the beach in Rhode Island last month. But I did not use my own air compressor, I used a friend's. And he also had a specialized system from Morflate that allows him to air down all 4 tires at the same time. It is much more convenient than the system that I have, which is probably why I've never used it. Now, if I weren't with friends who were airing down their tires, I most likely would have tried to get away with not airing down my tires on that beach. Now, I understand it's typically best practice to air down your tires when you're driving through sand, but I do have a friend of mine who drove on the exact same trail at East Beach in Rhode Island with a stock 4Runner Limited without doing anything to air down his tires. So I was feeling pretty confident in my TRD off-road. It's got 4-wheel drive, it's got multi-terrain select, and it even has crawl control. And to top it all off, I have all-terrain tires, and my friend who had the 4Runner Limited did not have all-terrain tires. So I was feeling pretty confident. If someday I were to purchase a base level trim of some sort of 4-wheel drive vehicle that does not come with crawl control, multi-terrain select, or even a rear locking differential, I would absolutely make the use of a portable air compressor a priority. Now finally, item number 3. And if I haven't lost you yet, chances are I'm about to. Because the third item on my list, the item that I have never used in the 3 years of travel, is my winch. Within the first year of owning our Colorado ZR2, my wife and I took a 5-week long cross-country road trip that totaled over 8,000 miles. And we did this without replacing the front bumper and without installing a winch. In the months following that trip, I'd go out occasionally for weekend adventures with some friends, wheeling on some local trails. And one afternoon, after driving through a frozen mud pit, which is a terrible idea, I realized that I had banged up my stock plastic bumper quite a bit, which of course made me think about installing a new bumper. And because us overlanders like to use social media and Google to help us make all of the important decisions, I spent weeks researching which bumper I wanted and how it looked on other Colorado ZR2s. And what I noticed is most people who install a new bumper on their vehicle often install a winch at the same time. And after doing further research and also reading a bunch of comments on Instagram and YouTube, I kinda came to the conclusion that if you don't install a winch with your winch-ready bumper, it may or may not be an indicator as to whether you wheel your vehicle. Now, this is definitely not true, and it's certainly a stereotype used amongst the overland and off-road community, but my pride got the better of me, and I was absolutely certain I needed to install a winch. And to be clear, I know there are plenty of people out there who have wheeled their vehicles and put them through more abuse without a winch installed than I have with my truck, and I have a winch. But at the time, me being a bright-eyed, green overland enthusiast, I decided I gotta get a winch because I have to look the part, which is ridiculous. In fact, when it came time to install a new bumper on my wife's 4Runner, we decided not to install a winch just because we haven't even used the one on the Colorado ZR2. Of course, I could absolutely be one of the more unique situations. You yourself watching this video could have found yourself in many situations where you didn't have a winch, you got stuck, you wish you had it, so then you finally installed the winch and probably use it every weekend. And if that's the case, then good, you made a smart purchase and it's working for you. But for me, I never used my winch. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I regret it, because I know full well that there could come a day in the future where I find myself stuck, or a friend of mine on the trail might find themselves stuck, and I can finally say, whoa, time to use the winch. So at the end of the day, these three items, in my experience, are items that we have never used. It doesn't necessarily mean that if I could go back in time, that I wouldn't purchase them. In fact, I would still absolutely install the winch, even though it hasn't been used. The high lift jack and the portable air compressor, they're probably less likely for me to purchase again if I had to go back in time. So the point that I'm really trying to make here is be smart about your purchases. Don't just go online, check Instagram, check YouTube and all the socials and buy what everybody else is buying because you want to look the part. It would probably be more beneficial to just ask yourself, what kind of overland travel am I realistically going to do? My wife and I, and even my friends and I, when we travel, we are a little bit more on the side of touring overlanders. We don't necessarily look at a difficult trail and think, I want to tackle that just because it looks hard. If there's potential to get some sort of mountaintop view with an epic campsite, we'll probably be more inclined to try out that difficult trail. But for the most part, just traveling to new locations and being in a new environment is enough for us. So if all those epic destinations that you're trying to travel to are going to require you to spend many hours on the highway and then a few more hours on some backcountry road, maybe it's some well-maintained Forest Service road, and occasionally you might find yourself on that one rocky trail, that should help you determine what items are most important to bring on your trip, which may or may not include the items that I listed in this video. So now comes the time at the end of the video where I would like you, the viewer, to leave your comments down below and let me know what you think of my list. Remember that these three items are not by any means deemed unnecessary, and if you have them, you made a bad choice. All I'm sharing with you is my experience and the fact that I've never had to use them myself. So let me know what you think of my 3 items and whether or not you've used them in the past. And I would also love to hear about any items you yourself have never used that weren't on this list. And please remember to be kind when making your comments because, after all, everyone has different opinions on this topic. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate you watching. And as always, peace, people.